To what extent would you agree with Professor Patrick Minford insofar as regarding free trade agreements? Actually, they're somewhat of a red herring because, of course, notwithstanding the requirement under Article 50 to have one, and notwithstanding the fact that, for example, the EU concluded one with Ukraine in a matter of months, actually it's not politicians who dictate the terms of trade, it's businesses in one country that trade with businesses in another country. And simply having an agreement not to impose tariffs isn't necessary. You could simply not impose tariffs.
Well, for 20 years, I've really been in business. I've not been a politician. And it is quite true that politicians keep on going to documents and regulations and forget that the fundamental trade is on price. Price is the key thing, and quality. If you get the price right and you get the quality, you'll penetrate any market. And Britain has shown that it can do this. After all, we've moved over the last 10 years, and Patrick Minford's book does explain this. We've moved away from the European single market 10% out to the global world. Now, if you can do that in 10 years, and you make a real determined commitment, and you make bilateral trade agreements, that shift can be much faster, in my view. So I think we need to be very careful about these. Are difficult questions. We have, in some areas of the EEA, advantageous trade terms for people getting through. Somebody who wants to stay selling into Europe will basically keep their manufactured products in line with European regulations. You give up the chance to influence those regulations, but on the other hand, it is only an influence, and you gain the chance to sell your goods in wider markets because you've got trade arrangements. These are balance of issues. But what is interesting, and this is the most important thing to remember, we hear from the corporates. They seem to dominate the news-gathering procedures. Endlessly, heads of a big corporation are rolled out. These people are very happy to lobby in Brussels for a preferential deal for their large corporation. The people who are basically with us and growing in substantial numbers are the smaller businesses who really do feel the effects of the regulations and who want to be free to trade globally, want to have the shackles off, are entrepreneurial in mind, are adventurous in spirit, and are facing up to the need for this country to rejuvenate itself outside the EU and confident that you can do it. The politicians are largely not, but Minford has done a great deal of work on alternative models, markets, and everything like that. But at the end of the day, the message I come away from it is basically a contract between the seller and the buyer. And we keep forgetting this. These trade agreements are very marginal. I mean, and most of them are actually going to collapse. In my view, we're going to see most of these big American trade agreements. I mean, at the moment, the two presidential candidates are against the Asian trade agreement that Obama's negotiated. I don't think that's going to go very fast. These big trading agreements, this big thing, the inability of WTO to get trade agreements through is all part of this big institutional world. It's the people who think that they make the rules for a world which has become computerized, which has become much faster, much lighter on its feet, is very different business. And I sometimes think, in talking to my political colleagues and friends, they forget that this business out there, you know, I used to be involved in trading steel. I mean, the rapidity with which they make their decisions on price would quite stagger you. And I mean, it's just a very different marketplace than one that we see described in political documents. Now, last one question, right at the back.